Welcome to Film Study, an all American podcast with Lexi. I'm Lexi, and I'm hype because I have Kelvin, aka Kofi. You see him in the comments all the time, as do I. And we're about to break down Asher Adams' character and his journey just throughout the past couple seasons. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, rate the podcast, little 5 stars if you'd like. But all of those things, hope that you enjoy it. So let me start off with this. Asher Adams is
Oh, here
not
we
a
go.
beloved character, not a very beloved character in the all-American fandom lore in the actual show as well. I think I'll say that too. So how and why did Asher become your favorite character? And start with just like how'd you find All American in general too?
Okay, so this is actually kind of weird. So I really am not into the whole teen drama TV series. I actually
Hmm.
found All American on accident. I was actually scrolling through videos on YouTube, and then I got a YouTube ad came in my recommendations for videos I've been watching, and I saw the trailer for the first season of All American. I'm like, okay, this seems pretty interesting. It's got football. It's a predominantly black cast, and you don't really see those, especially for teen shows. And this
Right.
looks really, really fire. So I'm like, you know what? Let me tune in for the series premiere on CW. And I saw the pilot episode, and I became hooked ever since. So yeah, that's kind of how it started for me.
That's so cool. So you didn't watch it on Netflix. You watched it like as it was airing.
Yeah,
That's really cool. Look at the targeted ads coming through, doing their job, doing their job.
yeah, yeah.
I love that. And then with that being said, I think that's really interesting because I would assume that if Asher is your favorite character, I feel like for the characters that aren't as popular or who tend to get a lot of hate or something, people really like them or have a better opinion of them if they've watched like on Netflix sort of like in a binging format. I'm just like just the people that I've talked to, seen that just like in who I've been talking to. But I'm so interested because like watched it as it was happening, saw the pilot and everything. So how did Asher become your favorite character?
Well, this was kind of a slow progression for me. I I'm not gonna lie, just like most of the people in the fandom, I really hated Asher with a passion,
Hmm.
especially with everything that, especially when I watched season one. But as the episodes continued and I continued the series for him throughout the series, I realized, I think there's a little bit more to him than meets the eye,
Hmm.
and I found his story to be very, very relatable because I know dudes like this. I mean, I don't necessarily play football, but I've met dudes like that where you think they're one way, but then when you hang around them and get to know them, you find out that they have a little bit more depth to him. So I was like, you know what? I think there's something in there. Like, I think generally he really wants to be a good guy, but I also think he's a little bit misunderstood and
Yeah.
insecure. And I just think that, everybody deserves a chance to redeem themselves after they screwed up. So I really appreciated how he started, and where he is right now. So, and I'm like, you know what? I root for him because I've made mistakes. Well, I've never done what he's done, but like, but
He's done a
I've
lot.
there. But I've been there where I feel like the whole world's against me. But one of the enduring things I like about him is that he owns it, and then he just tries to live every day to make himself better. So I'm like, you know what? And I also like a good redemption story arc. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what drove me in. So that's part of one of the reasons. So we'll get more
That's
into it
so
when we
cool.
discuss it more.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. That's really cool. It's actually funny because you are the second person this week that has said to me that like Asher is misunderstood. Like after watching sort of through all of the seasons, that Asher is misunderstood. So that's a interesting take, and I think that I agree with it in parts. I think that I agree with it in parts. And I don't think that we pay enough attention to like how his backstory shaped who he is as well, because he has some crazy parents as well. All of the parents, for the most part, except for Laura Baker,
And Grace.
and at times Grace,
Yeah, yeah,
are trash, are trash.
uh,
Period.
yeah,
And Coach
yeah.
Montez. Coach Montez is a good parent. Um, but yeah, yeah, yeah. So getting into it. Season one, when we meet Asher, he just has a lot of missteps. I'm gonna run through this pretty quickly and try to like give a brief synopsis of it. But obviously, he's threatened by Spencer sort of right off the bat, makes the joke, the sort of the racist joke about the Crips or Bloods. Just continues this time sort of being threatened by Spencer because he's a wide receiver, ends up like giving away the playbook because of his own like actions. Has this situation where he took advantage of Olivia in the past, and they're sort of keeping that a secret. What happened with Layla? He was with Layla. Layla sort of breaks up with him later on. He has money issues. Like it's a whole thing. But ultimately, his choices to hurt his team by not welcoming Spencer on the team, his choices to continue to hide secrets from people, be it like his money issues, be it the situation that happened with Olivia, and really sort of not necessarily take accountability for those things, not the money issues, because that's not his fault, but like taking accountability and being truthful and honest with the people that are around him, sort of cause him to really have a tough time with his friends, have a tough time with Jordan, have a tough time with JJ at times. Obviously, gets himself kicked off the team. And then there's some things out of his control, like his dad kicks him out because he got kicked off the team, so he's living in his car for a little bit. He's drinking a lot. But then obviously Olivia helps him. They have that little scene at homecoming where she dumps the alcohol out, and obviously Olivia gets Layla to let him stay at her house, so he's staying with them, and sort of by the end of the season he's back on good footing, so he gets back on the team eventually. And it was one of my favorite episodes, actually. It was the combine. So he shows up to the combine. He doesn't get an offer with a scholarship, but Billy lets him get back onto the team. And by the ending of season one, he's sort of starting to try to be better. He returns a favor to Olivia by taking away a drink from her at the end of season one after she finds out about her parents' affair, and is sort of back on good standing with his dad. So what did you think about him and the first season of the show?
Oh, good grief! All right, where do I
I
even
know it's a
start?
lot, right?
Yeah. He never. I'll say this: he did not make a first impression the first time we saw him on our screen. That whole comment with Spencer when they first meet. I'm surprised Spencer didn't throw hands at that point. but, but like
Hands rated E
I
for
think,
everyone.
yeah, but yeah, it showed that you don't make a comment like that unless you're threatened by him, and I just knew from the start that oh, this is going to be some sort of rivalry between the two of them, and then you add Layla into the mix, then it's like, oh man, this could be a potential problem. And honestly, one of the things I really didn't like about him was he wasn't being as welcoming to Spencer as the other Beverly Hills kids were. You know what I'm saying? I mean, even Jordan, after a point, welcomed him into the fold, and then you started hanging out. But there was always this unspoken tension between him and Spencer and Asher, and we'll get more into it when we get into season 4 because that's when it really comes to a head. But yeah, and that whole thing with him and Olivia, I thought this has been something that I discussed with some of my friends about. Was he in the wrong for what they did, and because she wasn't of right mind, so to speak, she was influenced by drugs. So I'm like, damn, did he really do that? And it was like if you're in a relationship with Layla, you got this really nice girl. Why would you do that to her? And you know that they're best friends, so that just made things super worse. And then yeah, the whole thing with him and stealing the plays. I mean, he just made mistake after mistake after mistake. So there was a point where I didn't feel bad for him. Only time I started actually feeling bad for him is when after he let it out of the bag during homecoming when he pretty much slut shamed Olivia in front of the whole school, and then got
Right.
kicked off the foot. Yeah, got kicked off the football team, and then to add insult to injury, his dad kicks him out of the house, and he's sleeping in his car. I'm like, okay, yeah, I know he screwed up, but that's a little bit much, if you ask me. That's still your son. You don't do that to him. So I felt a little bit bad for him. So yeah, it
Right.
was a lot. It was a lot. I don't know if we discussed this, but even Spencer even tried to extend a olive
An
branch gift. I
olive
don't know
branch
what.
with the car and the money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I thought at that point maybe they would have you know gotten they wouldn't be buddy, but they'd be cordial, like as football teammates, and maybe considering that he and Jordan have been friends since they were kids, for Jordan's sake, that he would just try and ingratiate himself with Spencer and welcome him to the team and just be cordial and stuff. But I think in the back of his mind too, he peeped that Spencer was feeling his
What was going
girl,
on with
and
yeah, what was going on with
yeah, yeah.
it was
So
all well and
that
good until
right.
that
So it made it hard for them to, try and start something. So, and I mean, you lose him how you get him, and I mean, he was never really honest with himself about, especially everything with his money issues. Like Layla even told him that I'm not with you because he had money. I'm with you because I like you,
right.
right? But I guess this guy's just,
Which meh.
I don't know. I
Being
mean,
just positive truthful, I don't know.
yeah, well, it's
At the
true,
time,
but
I'm sure. At the
yeah,
time, I'm sure she was. Yeah.
the time I'm sure. But Layla wasn't honest with herself because she felt that she was also feeling, Spencer, and she
Right.
kissed him in the at his job, and then even when Asher found out, he wasn't even mad. He was like, I remember that conversation. Like I saw it on screen when I was watching it live. Like this dude looked like he was about to burst into tears, saying, "I forgive you," like because he knew that at any moment that he was afraid that she was going to leave him for Spencer.
Yeah.
So he just let it
And
go
to
because
be
he knew
fair, she
he's
did.
right. But at the same time, I think also he forgave her because in the back of his mind he knew what he did with Olivia, so he couldn't like just be on the high ground, so to speak, saying, "Yo, you
Right.
cheated on me," da 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 da, when he did what he did with Olivia. So I think that's part of why he, let it go. But it didn't matter in the end because that homecoming episode, she breaks up with uh, Asher, and then he's drinking, thinking that what, let me just forget about it. And then when he tells Olivia, and Olivia finds out, and well, he finds out that she knew about it. That's when he just decides to say screw everybody and just put everyone on blast. And I did not feel bad for him when Billy kicked him off the team, but again, I did feel
I
bad
think
when
Billy should have done worse. All he didn't even stand up. That's another conversation for another day. But I think when it comes to football consequences in particular, Asher, because actually I think at first it was he was only suspended for the homecoming game. He was only suspended for the homecoming game, which I don't know if that's a strong enough punishment. I think just throughout as we go throughout the seasons, I don't think that Asher has really realized really has had any sustaining consequences when it comes to football until we get to, when we get to it. Um which I think is interesting. But yeah, you make some good points about Layla and him being so forgiving because of um, what happened in the secret that he was keeping from her. And let's not forget he tried to get her back right after homecoming as well. If she was
yeah,
already with Spencer.
Yeah, that's gonna be
Season 1 was
that's one.
messy as far as relationships
Yeah,
go.
yeah, that's one L that he took. That's just started a trend of like continuous missteps that he's gonna face as the series progresses. So yeah,
Yeah, and I think to that credit, I think everything that's happened to him interpersonally, uh, is as a result of his own actions, especially in season 1. So everything with football, everything with, like, his relationships, all of that was as a result of his own actions, but being, kicked out of his house for losing his spot on the football team, his dad, like, continuing to drink and get drunk and everything, not not his fault. Not his fault.
yeah, he has a trash home life.
Yeah.
Like, I, and I think that made me a little bit get off his neck because if this is what he's coming home to every day, you tend to wonder where he gets his personality and like how he acts. Because sometimes when you're in an environment like that, you tend to pick up some of those negative tendencies. So I mean, it ain't like he killed somebody. Yeah, he embarrassed himself in front of the whole school, but for you to kick him out of your house because he's off the team, that's a bit much. So
Right, right.
yeah, I felt
And I
bad. I
think
really did.
yeah, and I think that, his family issues only continued into as we switch into season 2, because you know, I think that Olivia had been helping sort of his dad, land back on his feet, like, right, she tried to get help him get a job at one point, but things are mostly fine with his dad at the beginning of season 2, but his mom
Mm-mm-mm.
comes back into his life,
Mm-mm.
and I don't think that we had met his mom before then, and I think that he had attempted to live with her in season 1, which is why he was staying in his car, but she said no, if I'm remembering correctly, and so now she's just like, "Oh, I wanna get back into your life," and he's just not for it.
Yeah.
And then it was this whole thing where I'm gonna stay on his mom for a second because that was really an interesting storyline. It was this whole thing where she was just like, "Oh, your dad is keeping secrets from you about me, and your dad told me to stay away from you, and it was because she was an escort." So he's like
Uh,
finding out all of these things. She uses Asher to like manipulate the dad or manipulates Asher into serving his dad with divorce papers because the dad wouldn't receive the papers. So it was just like this whole thing where it's just like, "Oh, both your mom and your dad are trash."
yeah, I don't see how you can make your son do that. I mean, that's a bit much if you ask me. It's one
And like
thing where you feel,
under the guise of coming back and under the guise of like being in your life again.
yeah, that wasn't cool, man. That's just, and again, it's like he just can't catch a break. But the saving grace was that your favorite character, Olivia, was with him through all that. So it's
Yeah,
like it made things a little bit better. Even in season one, she helped him get out of his car, convinced Layla of all people to let him
right,
move into the house,
right.
then got him to get to the combine. So it was like she, and then helped him with his dad. So like it made things a little bit
And his
more
mom,
tolerable.
right? She was at that dinner too.
R- Right. So it made things a little bit better, and the load was less heavy for him. So it was that was good on her. Pretty sure fans
And
weren't a fan of that, but you know.
not at all. Not at all. I was one of the fans that were not happy about it, but with that being said, she did do a lot for him. And, throughout that process, he starts to fall for her by I think it's by like 201, right? He like JJ is noticing him looking at her, and so he sort of very early in season 2 was like very clearly like, I want to be with you. I want to be in a relationship with you. And she, to be honest, if you go back and watch, she wasn't really for it. She was like, I want to stay friends, man.
Yeah, I know. It was, yeah. I mean, because if you think about it, the dynamics were messy because, they're in
Extremely
this
messy.
group. Yeah, they're in this group of friends, right? And then she was having her own issues with her addictions, and then you couple that with the drunken hookup that they had, and then how it all came out. So how they even
She was also on drugs, right? And she was just like, I was,
Right. Yeah, she was on all sorts of drugs. I don't know what was going on with Asher at the time for him to make that type of decision. I
I,
don't know if we ever got context for that. So,
that is something I wish that the writers and the directors had executed better. I think that was a really poorly handled storyline.
yeah.
But yeah, I agree.
R-
I wish we got
yeah,
more context.
yeah. But so the fact that they're getting in this relationship together is shocking. But honestly, I think for him at least, I think that she's the reason why he's a better person now than what he was then
For
because
sure.
I think Asher tends to lean into girls, especially that always want to try and see the good in him because he never sees it in himself.
Exactly.
So she did that for him, and I think that's what he was. He. Now it's going to be weird when we get into season 3 when they have their arguments. So that's
Right.
another. Yeah, but like that was a part of it, and I'm not gonna lie, I thought they weren't bad together. I didn't watch it for the couples on the show. I'm
Right.
indifferent to that type of stuff, but for the two of them to be together, that time they were together, I wasn't mad at it. So it was
Yeah.
alright.
I think I think I looked at that. I look back on that um relationship that they had in season 2 when she finally, because of what they got together, and then she was just like, no, I kind of want to stay friends because this is weird. And then it was a couple more episodes, and then it was just like, okay, no, I don't want to be your friend. And she was just like relented, and it's just like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna do this. And then blah blah blah. Very soon after that was his whole steroids, which we'll get into a second, and them breaking up again and getting back together at the end. But
Yep.
my whole thought process on that relationship when she finally got into a relationship with him was that I have a very interesting take on this. I think that she just did it because she like wanted him as a friend, and she was just like, "Oh, like he wants to be in this relationship, so I'm gonna hop into it with him." Like it's not really what I want, but I mean, I'm not with Spencer, so
You know what? I'm not gonna lie. I kind of felt that way too, but I generally think maybe she liked the guy. Because she
oh
cares
yeah,
for
I
him.
think that she cares for him like deeply. I think that she cares for
Yeah,
him deeply, and I don't think
but
that
like,
she would have done half the things that she did if she didn't care for him deeply. And they've
right.
all known each other. We find out in season 3. They've all known each other for so long. Like they've known each other at least since they were 11 years old.
Yeah. So it made sense, and the relationship wasn't bad. They had their ups and downs for at least for the most part in season 2, up until we get into the steroid use. They had a really decent relationship. One of my favorite episodes was the one where they go on the thing with Spencer, Dylan, and Kia when they go to
The roller
uh,
skate rink.
the roller skate rink. Then
Still
he gets a
thing.
first hand. Yeah, and he gets a first person witness about the racial profiling Spencer and Kia get into with the when the store when the lady calls the cops on them, and he
Right.
realizes,
Shop.
dang,
Yeah.
yeah, he got out of his Beverly Hills bubble and spent a time in Crenshaw and saw what it was, and was like, somebody had to speak up and you know call this out, and that was really good, and and he and Spencer are like they good, like
Oh,
they
good.
not
Yeah, yeah,
friends.
yeah.
Yeah, that's like even says when Spencer quits football when his dad dies, he's like, hey man, there's always a spot for you back on the team, and he welcomes him back with open arms. So that
Right.
was
And
that
I
was
think
growth.
yeah, no, I agree. And then to your point about growth, he mentions it in that very same roller skating sort of episode where he's just like Dylan is sort of the the voice of the audience and like, "Weren't y'all just fighting about XYZ?" And Asher literally says just like, "Oh, it's called growth. It's called growth." So they were chill, they were walking together and everything like that. Um, but it's so interesting because as we shift into his steroid use, as we shift into him putting still being threatened by Spencer on the field, though he did say like your spot is always open. Obviously, he felt the pressure with football to just be in the best shape. He was always working out, ended up taking steroids. Why do you think that he went down sort of that route after experiencing this period of growth?
Honestly, I think it was a it was a couple of things. Okay, so let's break this down. Right, one, it was that since the whole thing with what happened in season one, where he got kicked off the team, got reinstated, he was kind of off the radars with the big type schools, right? Because I think it was established earlier in season one that he was one of the top receivers in the country. Uh, I think he led the team in receptions and yards before
Yeah, I
Spencer
think he had
came
a school
around.
record. He had a school record for sure,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So he was considered wide receiver one, and then Spencer comes in from Crenshaw. Clearly, he's the better player, so he gets relegated to wide receiver two when Spencer becomes wide receiver one. And I think a lot of it was just trying to keep up with Spencer, because he he wants to prove himself that he's just as good, And I think it was the pressure of trying to get back to where he was before everything kind of spiraled out of control for him. And I don't think it was necessary. It might be a little bit of jealousy on Spencer's part, but he didn't. He, unlike what happened in season one, where he showed it visibly, he hit it well. But I think in deep down inside, he's like, "Yo, I just got to prove that I can just be as good as this guy, and that I'm just as talented and whatnot." So I think that's part of it. Part of it was trying to get back on the field, to get back to that top level he was at, and steroids. I mean, he felt that it would give him an edge to get to his where he wanted to go. So I think that's part of the reason why he took it. I don't think he just. I'm pretty sure if he felt, and it's a lack of confidence for me too, because he felt like he wasn't good enough to do it. I mean, like he felt that his own abilities weren't as good. I think he felt that he needed it to get back to where he was. So I think that's part of the reason
Right.
why he took steroids.
No,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And I think that was the majority of it was everything that you mentioned. And now sort of going back and thinking about and sort of reviewing season 1, 2, it's sort of absurd that his dad not sort of absurd, it is absurd that his dad kicked him out of the house, um, because he lost his spot on the team. And so I'm not saying it's fully about that, but also it's in that way talking about the lack of confidence, talking about needing to prove himself. I think it was also like needing to prove himself to his parents as well, just because of like everything that was going on with them too. But I definitely think majority of it was because he was threatened by Spencer's ability and the idea of like I got to get my spot.
Yeah, most definitely. And he could have taken it the other way, like just work hard, and if you can't, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being second best. I mean, there are in football, you just don't rely on one receiver. There are wide receiver duos. Like look
Right,
at I mean, I'm gonna use this example. The Arizona Cardinals back in the day, they had Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden. They were the best 1-2 punch. So you could have looked at it that way. He was like, okay, I have to accept that Spencer is the best, but let me do what I can to maximize my abilities and what I'm good at, so the
right,
team can be better, right?
right.
But
And
he
even when
just,
Spencer was off, I think he said to Spencer, he was just like, "Oh, you've left big shoes to fill." But he doesn't have to be Spencer James. To your point, he can maximize his own talent.
yeah, he just has to be Asher Adams. He doesn't need to be Spencer James, you know.
Exactly. And he
But
definitely doesn't need to do it as he's in a relationship with a recovering addict.
that's also part of it too. I don't think he realized why what he did was wrong, because not only are you taking steroids, you're in a relation with a girl that has had a problem with substance abuse. So I don't think he fully grasped why this was an issue. So when she found out, I mean, the only
And then he
logical
asked
thing
her to
for
keep
her.
it a secret.
Yeah, I think also because he felt that if they find that if your dad finds out, then that's it for me. Like, please. But then, well, he said he was gonna stop, and then I think I don't know what episode this is in season two, but she gives him the hug, and then she notices that he's a little bit off, and that that's when it clicks that he's still using. So she
Right.
has to break the news. So it was like, yeah, man, Asher, come on, bro. Like, you can't be
Right.
doing
It
that.
was around the art of peer pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. And so they ended that season, he because Billy had taken the and again, sort of being lenient when it comes to Asher on the football field. So he had that 1 game suspension. He gave away the playbook in season 1, so that ultimately got him kicked off the team. He got his spot back not long after that. And then he's using steroids. He's taking steroids, and Billy takes the fall for him. And it was like I want to say it was in the season finale that he goes and is actually just like, "Look, those weren't Billy's. Those were mine." And then he finally gets kicked off the kicked off the team yet again. He's sort of getting, in quotation marks, his relationship with Olivia back on track. But again, it's irreparable, I think, damage to a relationship. Number one, their history did not give them the best start. And then number two, using taking steroids while you're with a recovering addict. And ultimately she did, in the season finale, she did take a drink, and as we know, she was drinking throughout the summer going into season 3 while he was on a I want to say it was like cruise with his mom where he met the infamous Vanessa.
yeah, I don't know if we talked about this. Did we talk about the fight that they had in 206 before Spencer got shot? About how he never went, he didn't go with her to help her practice for the cotillion,
Right, because he
and
was so obsessed. He was so obsessed with being
yeah,
in the field that he missed it. Yeah, he just let her down several times.
yeah, and I kind of got where he was coming from. The first argument I got where he was coming from because he felt like, look, this is my future. Like, if I don't do this, I don't get a scholarship. I'm not going to be able to go to college. Yada 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 da da da. And but then the second time, I think he was a little bit out of line when he got into that conversation with her again at the cotillion. So you could start to see that there was going to be some
He needed to be
issues and
slapped at the cotillion. He did not get his just desserts. I'm mad. Billy was finally about to confront that man as he should have at homecoming, and Jordan stopped. Like, how does Asher always escape fights? I don't understand.
well, well, well. As we get into season 3, even though this is kind of a tragic, he gets his sort of just desserts. Spoiler alert! But like,
Yeah,
it's gonna. So, but yeah, I mean,
he
he
does, but
just
at this time, I think the audience was just, and rightly so, was just like, okay, Asher needs to catch some actual heat, because he just keeps
yeah,
getting off like scot free, or people just forgive him very, very
yeah,
quickly. Um,
yeah.
but to
So
to that point, he spent again after that, and that's what I say is like they. He and Olivia left on a note of him inviting her saying like, no, you need to spend this time with your mom. But they were sort of getting back together. But again, like the relationship as a whole it wasn't solid. It was not on a solid foundation. It was not I don't think it was the best for the both of them in the long run of things, taking an average out of like where they were and where they ended. And he develops, in his words, a connection with Vanessa Montez. Had to cut it right there, but yeah, thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the next part where we break down seasons 3 and 4 for Asher Adams. Take care.